Maya pressed her face against the cold metal bars of the slave quarters, watching the grand procession march through the crystal streets of Zephyria Prime. The galactic empress Vexhari rode atop her floating throne, her 6 arms gracefully managing the ceremonial controls while her serpentine lower body coiled beneath ornate robes. Behind her flew the thing that made every species in the galaxy tremble, her bond dragon Carthex. The creature was magnificent and terrifying. Its scales shifted between deep purple and midnight black, each one the size of a dinner plate. Wings that could block out a sun stretched wide as it glided beside the Empress's procession. Steam rose from its nostrils, and when it opened its mouth to roar, Maya could see rows of teeth like crystalline daggers. The sound made the ground shake and sent smaller aliens scurrying for cover. Maya had been on Zephyria Prime for 3 standard years now, ever since the raiders took her from the human colony on Kepler 442b. She was 12 then, just another human child to be sold in the Outer Rim markets. Humans were considered a curiosity, a young species barely spaceworthy, known mostly for their stubbornness and strange emotional bonds. They made decent enough slaves for manual labor, though they were fragile compared to most galactic species. Now 15, Maya worked in the crystal mines beneath the city. Her hands were permanently stained blue from the precious Zephyr crystals that powered half the galaxy's technology. The Kethrani overseers found humans useful because they could fit into small spaces where the automated miners couldn't reach. Their fingers were nimble enough to extract crystals without damaging them. "Back to work, Pinkskin," growled Overseer Grex, his 4 eyes glowing red with irritation. The reptilian alien stood nearly 8 feet tall, his scales a dull brown color that marked him as lower caste among his people. "The procession is not for slaves to watch." Maya reluctantly pulled away from the window. The other human slaves, about 30 of them in this facility, were already returning to their sleeping mats. They knew better than to anger Grex. He had a habit of withholding food rations from humans who annoyed him. "Did you see the dragon?" whispered Tam, a boy about Maya's age who'd been captured from a transport ship 2 years ago. His dark skin bore the same crystal stains as Maya's, and his eyes held the same weary look they all developed after too long in captivity. "Everyone saw the dragon," muttered Sarah, an older woman who'd been here longer than anyone. "Been seeing that monster for 7 years now. It's gotten bigger." Maya nodded but said nothing. She had seen the dragon many times during processions, but today something felt different. When Carthex had passed by their building, she could have sworn it looked directly at her through the window. Its eyes, deep amber pools that seemed to hold ancient intelligence, had locked onto hers for just a moment. In that instant, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced since her capture: recognition. It was impossible, of course. Dragons were bonded only to the imperial family, and they chose their bonds based on psychic compatibility and royal bloodlines. A human slave girl from a backwater colony couldn't possibly register on a creature's consciousness that had lived for over 1,000 years. The night cycle began, and the artificial lights dimmed to simulate darkness. Maya lay on her thin sleeping mat, staring up at the metal ceiling. Around her, the other slaves settled into restless sleep. Tomorrow would bring another day in the mines, another day of extracting wealth from masters who saw them as nothing more than useful tools. But Maya's mind kept returning to that moment with the dragon. In her dreams, she was back on Kepler 442b, running through the golden wheat fields while her parents worked their small farm. She could smell the earth after rain, hear her mother singing old earth songs while she cooked dinner. Her father would tell stories about the ancient days when humans first reached for the stars, driven by curiosity and hope rather than fear and survival. "We're explorers at heart, Maya," he'd said one evening as they watched Earth's sun, just a bright star in their sky, twinkle in the distance. "That's what makes humans special. We don't accept limitations. When the galaxy tells us something is impossible, we find a way to do it anyway." Maya had been too young then to understand what he meant. Now, lying in a slave quarters light years from home, she was beginning to grasp his words. Every species they'd encountered in the mines had accepted their fate. The Rigelians worked quietly. The Tauri followed orders without question. Even the proud Centaurians had eventually submitted to their circumstances. But the humans, they still whispered plans of escape. They still shared stories of home. They still hoped. The next morning brought an unusual announcement. Overseer Grex's voice echoed through the facility's communication system. All slaves report to the main courtyard. The Empress requires a demonstration for visiting dignitaries. Maya's stomach dropped. Demonstrations usually meant someone would be made an example of, either through punishment or worse. The slaves filed out into the courtyard, a large open space surrounded by high walls topped with energy barriers. Above them, the twin suns of the Zephyria system cast harsh light through the planet's thin atmosphere. The Empress Vexhari had arrived with a small retinue of officials and what appeared to be representatives from several other species. Maya recognized Altarian diplomats by their blue skin and the crystal formations growing from their foreheads. There were also several beings she didn't recognize, tall, elegant creatures with silver skin and eyes like liquid mercury. And there, coiled in the center of the courtyard, was Carthex. The dragon was even more magnificent up close. Each scale reflected light like a prism, creating rainbow patterns across its massive form. Its head alone was larger than most hover vehicles, and when it breathed, small flames flickered between its teeth. The creature's eyes swept across the assembled slaves with obvious boredom, until they found Maya. Again, that moment of recognition. The dragon's gaze fixed on her, and Maya felt her heart racing. Around her, other slaves instinctively stepped back, but Maya found herself unable to move. Something was calling to her, drawing her forward despite every rational thought screaming at her to stay back, to blend in, to survive. The demonstration was about to begin, and Maya somehow knew that everything was about to change. Empress Vexhari raised one of her 6 arms and silence fell across the courtyard. Her voice carried the authority of someone who ruled over 300 star systems. Honored guests, today you witness the power that maintains order across our galaxy. Behold the bond between imperial blood and the ancient dragons. The silver-skinned aliens. Now Maya realized they must be the legendary architects. The species that had built most of the galaxy's megastructures watched with clinical interest. Their leader, tall even among their kind, spoke in a voice like chiming bells. We have heard tales of these creatures, Your Majesty. Our analysis suggests they are more than simple beasts. Indeed, the Empress replied. Dragons choose their bonds not through training or force, but through psychic resonance. Only those of pure imperial lineage can achieve such connection. She gestured toward Carthex. Show them, Ancient One. The dragon lifted its massive head and roared. The sound wasn't just noise, it carried meaning, emotion, power that resonated in every being's bones. The assembled dignitaries stepped back in awe and fear. Several of the smaller aliens covered their auditory organs. But Maya felt something different. Where others heard threat and dominance, she heard loneliness. The roar carried undertones of isolation, of a creature bound by duty but yearning for something more. It was a feeling she recognized all too well. Now, the Empress continued, we shall demonstrate what happens when lesser beings attempt to approach a bonded dragon. She pointed toward the group of slaves. You, the human girl with the stained hands, step forward. Maya's blood turned to ice. Several slaves around her whispered prayers in their native languages. Overseer Grex was grinning, his 4 eyes gleaming with anticipation. This was meant to be an execution disguised as a demonstration. Move, Grex shouted, prodding Maya with his shock staff. Maya's legs felt like liquid metal, but somehow she forced herself to walk toward the center of the courtyard. Each step brought her closer to Carthex, whose amber eyes never left her face. The dragon's massive form seemed to fill her entire vision. She could feel heat radiating from its scales, could smell the metallic scent of its breath. Dragons instinctively reject those who are not worthy, the Empress explained to her guests. The psychic backlash typically results in immediate death. Occasionally, for our entertainment, they prefer a more theatrical rejection. Maya stopped about 10 feet from Carthex's head. The dragon lowered its massive skull until it was level with her own. She could see her reflection in its amber eyes, could count the individual scales around its nostrils. Steam rose from the creature's mouth with each breath. Closer, commanded the Empress. Touch the creature. Maya's mind raced. This was meant to be her death, a show for alien dignitaries. She thought of her parents, of the stories her father told about human courage. She thought of the other slaves watching, probably thinking she was about to die for their entertainment. Then she thought of the loneliness she'd heard in the dragon's roar. Slowly, Maya raised her hand. Carthex watched her approach, completely still. The courtyard was silent except for the whisper of wind across crystal spires. Maya's fingers came within inches of the dragon's snout, and she felt something unexpected, a warm, tingling sensation, like static electricity but gentle. The dragon's eyes widened slightly, and Maya heard something impossible, a voice in her mind. "You are not like the others," it said, the words appearing in her thoughts like drops of warm rain. "Your emotions. They sing differently." Maya's hand trembled, but she didn't pull back. "You're lonely," she whispered so quietly that only the dragon could hear. "Lonely," Carthax repeated, as if tasting the word. "Is that what this feeling is? I have served for centuries, bound by duty and honor. But yes, lonely describes it well." "I know," Maya said, her voice barely audible. "I've been lonely too." Before the Empress could react, before the guards could intervene, Maya pressed her lips gently to the tip of Carthax's snout, a simple, human gesture of comfort and connection. The reaction was immediate and spectacular. Light erupted from the point of contact, not harsh or blinding, but warm and golden like sunrise. It spread outward in waves, washing over Maya and the dragon. Every being in the courtyard felt it, a pulse of pure emotion, connection, understanding. Carthax's eyes blazed with sudden fire, but not anger. Joy. Wonder. For the first time in 1,000 years, the ancient dragon felt truly seen, truly understood. Maya gasped as the connection formed, a bridge between their minds that carried no commands or bonds of servitude, but something else entirely: friendship. Images flashed through her consciousness, the dragon's memories of soaring between stars, of watching civilizations rise and fall, of the profound isolation that came with being the only one of his kind bonded to royalty. The light faded, leaving Maya and Carthax staring at each other in amazement. Around them, chaos erupted. "Impossible!" the Empress shrieked, her serpentine body coiling in rage. "No slave can bond with a dragon. Guards, destroy that human immediately." But the guards hesitated. The light had shown them something too, a glimpse of what the dragon had experienced. They had felt the creature's joy, its sudden freedom from the crushing weight of lonely duty. The architect leader stepped forward, his silver features animated with fascination. "Wait," he commanded, his voice carrying unexpected authority. "This phenomenon requires study. In all our archives, in all our observations of imperial dragons, nothing like this has been recorded." Carthax raised his massive head and spoke, his mental voice now touching every mind in the courtyard. "The human speaks truth with her heart. She offers connection without demand for dominance. This is new. Dragons bond only with imperial blood," the Empress snarled. "No," Carthax replied, his mental voice growing stronger. "Dragons bond with those who understand connection itself. This human child possesses something your bloodline has forgotten: the ability to reach out without seeking to control." Maya felt the dragon's protection surrounding her like a warm blanket. But she also felt something else, a power awakening within her that she'd never known existed. The kiss hadn't just created a bond. It had awakened something dormant in her human DNA. Memories that weren't her own began flooding her mind. Images of ancient Earth, of the first humans who had somehow developed psychic abilities that lay hidden in their genetic code. The memories showed her something incredible. Humans weren't just a young species stumbling around the galaxy. They were the inheritors of something powerful, something that had been sleeping until the right moment awakened it. The Empress was screaming orders, but her guards remained frozen. Several of the alien dignitaries were backing away, their instruments detecting energy readings they'd never seen before. Maya looked up at Carthax and smiled. "What happens now?" "Now," the dragon replied, spreading his massive wings, "we discover what humans are truly capable of." The courtyard trembled as Carthax prepared to take flight, and Maya realized her life as a slave was over. What would replace it she couldn't imagine. But for the first time since her capture, she felt hope burning bright in her chest. The Empress's palace guards finally moved, raising their plasma weapons toward Maya, but Carthax was faster. The dragon's massive tail swept across the courtyard, creating a barrier between Maya and the approaching soldiers. His mental voice thundered through every mind present. "Any who harm the human will answer to me." Maya felt the power flowing through their bond, and with it came knowledge she shouldn't possess. She could sense the fear radiating from the guards. could feel the Empress's rage like a bitter taste in her mouth. More surprisingly, she could detect something else. Uncertainty from some of the alien dignitaries, and from the architect leader a growing excitement. "Your Majesty," the silver-skinned architect said, stepping between the guards and Maya. "This development has significant implications. Our instruments detected energy patterns during the bonding that we've never recorded before. This human may possess abilities we don't understand. She's a slave," the Empress hissed. "A worthless human from a primitive colony. Dragons bond only with those of imperial blood." The architect's mercury-like eyes fixed on Maya. "Perhaps our understanding of both humans and dragons has been incomplete." Maya felt Carthex's amusement rippling through their connection. "The architects are builders of truth, young one. They recognize significance when they encounter it." Through their bond, Maya began accessing memories that weren't her own, not just from Carthex, but from something deeper. Genetic memories coded into human DNA, passed down from ancestors who had developed psychic abilities long before humanity reached the stars. The memories showed her that humans had once possessed remarkable gifts, but something had caused these abilities to become dormant. Until now. "Stand down," the architect leader commanded the guards, his voice carrying an authority that surprised even the Empress. "By the Galactic Accords of Scientific Preservation, this being is now under architect protection for study." The Empress's 6 arms writhed in fury. "You dare invoke the Accords on my own world?" "The Accords supersede even imperial authority when significant evolutionary developments are discovered," the architect replied calmly. "This human has demonstrated capabilities that could reshape our understanding of consciousness itself." Maya could feel Carthex's delight at the political maneuvering. "The architects are master strategists. They see the implications of our bond more clearly than the Empress realizes." "What implications?" Maya whispered. "Dragons are not native to this galaxy. We came from elsewhere long ago, seeking those who could understand true connection. The imperial bloodline provided adequate partnership. But you, young human, you offer something we had not dared hope for." Images flashed through their bond. Memories of Carthex's species arriving in the galaxy millennia ago, fleeing some great catastrophe. They had bonded with the strongest psychic species they could find, but it had always been a compromise. Dragons needed emotional connection, not just psychic compatibility. Maya felt another wave of power surge through her, and suddenly she could sense every living being in the courtyard. The guards' fear, the Empress's rage, the other slaves' amazement and hope. But most surprisingly, she could sense something from the human slaves that wasn't present in any of the alien beings. A spark of potential, dormant but real. "There are others," she gasped, looking toward her fellow humans. "They have it too." The architect leader's eyes widened. "Extraordinary. Can you sense specific individuals?" Maya nodded, overwhelmed by the flow of information. "Tam has it strong, and Sarah and Marcus from the northern mines. It's like sleeping music, waiting to be awakened." Carthex spread his wings wider and Maya felt his excitement building. This changes everything. If humans possess widespread psychic potential, if they can form true bonds rather than dominance relationships. "Your Majesty," the architect continued, "we must study this phenomenon immediately. The implications for galactic society could be profound." The Empress was backed into a corner and she knew it. The Galactic Accords were older than her empire, established by the architects themselves when they had first begun cataloging and preserving the galaxy's evolutionary developments. Even her power couldn't override them without causing a diplomatic incident that would destroy her standing with other galactic powers. "Fine," she snarled, "but the human remains a slave. Whatever study you conduct will be done here under my authority." The architect smiled, an expression that somehow seemed dangerous, despite his elegant features. "Of course, Your Majesty. Though I suspect our findings may complicate traditional classifications." Maya felt Carthex's protective presence wrapping around her mind like armor. "They cannot harm you now, young one. The architects will ensure your safety, but more importantly, you have awakened something that cannot be put back to sleep." "What do you mean?" Maya followed Carthex's mental guidance, extending her newfound senses toward the other human slaves. She could feel their dormant abilities like seeds waiting for water. Gently, she reached out to Tam first, the boy who had whispered to her about the dragon. The moment her consciousness touched his, something ignited. Tam gasped, his eyes widening as power flowed through him. Around the courtyard, monitoring devices began beeping frantically as his psychic signature suddenly blazed to life. Impossible, breathed one of the Empress's scientific advisors. The psychic readings just increased by 300%. Maya smiled and reached out to Sarah next, then Marcus, then all of them. One by one, the human slaves began awakening to abilities they'd never known they possessed. The courtyard filled with confused voices as 30 humans suddenly found themselves able to sense emotions, share thoughts, and feel connections that transcended physical barriers. The architect leader was practically vibrating with excitement. "Do you understand what you've done?" he asked Maya. "You've just awakened an entire population of latent psychics. This is the most significant evolutionary development in galactic history." But Maya was focused on something else. Through her connection to the other humans, she could feel their surprise and wonder, transforming into something more powerful. Hope. For the first time since their capture, they could sense each other's thoughts, could share strength and comfort in ways their captors couldn't understand or prevent. The Empress realized what was happening and started shouting orders, but it was too late. The architect leader was already making formal declarations about the need for immediate scientific protection, and Carthex was positioning himself to defend all of the humans, not just Maya. "This is only the beginning," the dragon assured her. "When the galaxy learns what humans are truly capable of, everything will change." Maya looked around at her fellow humans, all of them glowing with newfound power, all of them connected through bonds of shared experience and mutual support. For the first time in 3 years, she felt genuinely free. "What comes next?" she asked Carthex. The dragon's ancient eyes gleamed with anticipation. "Next, young one, we show the galaxy what happens when humans stop being slaves and start being themselves." 3 weeks later, Maya stood in a crystalline laboratory deep within the architect research facility, her head pounding from another day of tests. The psychic awakening had spread far beyond the original group of slaves. News of humans developing supernatural abilities had reached every corner of the galaxy, and the political fallout was immense. "The neural pathways are unlike anything we've documented," Dr. Gentar, the lead architect researcher, explained to his colleagues. "Human consciousness appears to operate on multiple frequencies simultaneously. They can form bonds not just with each other, but with any species willing to open their minds." Maya touched the cool crystal wall and immediately sensed the living network that connected the entire station. The architects had grown their technology rather than building it, creating structures that responded to thought and emotion. Through her developing abilities, she could feel the station's contentment, its purpose-driven satisfaction. But she could also feel something else, disturbances throughout the galaxy that made her uneasy. "More riots on Centauri 7, Tam reported, his voice strained from maintaining psychic contact with humans across multiple star systems. His abilities had grown rapidly since the awakening, and he'd become their unofficial communications coordinator. The Rigelian slave masters are refusing to release human workers, even after the Architect Council declared them a protected species." Maya's connection with Carthex pulsed with shared concern. The dragon spent most of his time now in space, flying between worlds to protect humans who were being persecuted for their new abilities. Many galactic governments saw psychic humans as a threat to the established order. "The Empress grows more desperate," Carthex warned through their bond. "She has been meeting with the Hegemony Council. They speak of containment. Containment how?" Maya asked aloud, causing Dr. Gentar to look up from his instruments. "The dragon brings news?" the architect asked. He had learned to recognize the signs of Maya's long-distance communication with Carthex. Maya nodded grimly. "Bad news. I think the Empire is planning something against humans." What they hadn't anticipated was how quickly human psychic abilities would spread. It wasn't just the original slaves who had awakened. Contact with awakened humans seemed to trigger dormant abilities in any human they encountered. Across the galaxy, human colonies, workers, and even free citizens were spontaneously developing powers. The transformation was causing chaos. Human slaves were escaping en masse, their psychic bonds allowing them to coordinate across vast distances. Human colonies were declaring independence from alien oversight. Most disturbing to the galactic powers, humans were beginning to bond with other species' technology. Creatures, and even artificial intelligences in ways that defied all previous understanding. "We've received reports from 17 different worlds," Sarah said, entering the laboratory with a datapad. Her abilities had manifested as an incredible capacity for information processing. She could psychically interface with computer systems and analyze vast amounts of data simultaneously. "Humans are bonding with Centaurian guard animals, Altarian crystal networks, even Tauri meditation spirits. It's like our species is designed to connect with anything that has consciousness." Dr. Gentar's silver features showed deep concern. "This level of adaptability is unprecedented. Other species develop specific psychic abilities suited to their environments. Humans appear to be universal adapters." Maya felt a chill run through her connection with Carthex. "That's not necessarily good news, is it?" "No," the dragon confirmed. "Universal adapters are seen as threats by species that pride themselves on unique abilities. The galaxy fears what it cannot control or predict." Through the station's crystal network, Maya sensed a sudden spike of alarm from the Architect Council chambers. Something was happening. She reached out with her abilities, trying to understand the source of the disturbance. Images flooded her mind. Massive ships moving through hyperspace, bearing the insignia of the galactic hegemony. Military vessels, hundreds of them, converging on systems with significant human populations. "They're mobilizing a fleet." Maya gasped. "The hegemony is moving to contain human worlds." Dr. Gentar's eyes widened. "That's impossible. The Accords prohibit military action against protected species." "Apparently not anymore," Tam said, his face pale as he processed psychic reports from humans across the galaxy. "I'm getting messages from everywhere. Human communities are being surrounded, communications are being jammed, and they're demanding all psychically active humans report for evaluation and registration." Maya felt fury building through her bond with Carthex. The dragon's rage was like a solar flare, hot and dangerous. "They dare attempt to cage a species I have claimed as kin." "Carthex, what can you do?" Maya asked. "I am one dragon among hundreds. Most of my kind remain bonded to imperial bloodlines. But there are others, ancient ones who have grown weary of serving unworthy masters. The awakening of humans has given us perspective." Sarah looked up from her data analysis, her expression grim. "It gets worse. I'm detecting energy signatures suggesting they're not just planning containment. The fleet compositions include planetary bombardment vessels." The implication hit Maya like a physical blow. They're planning to destroy human worlds. Dr. Gentar began moving frantically around the laboratory, activating communication systems. "I must contact the Council immediately. This violates every principle of the Galactic Accords." "The Accords only matter if someone enforces them," Maya said, her mind racing. Through her connection with awakened humans across the galaxy, she could feel their terror, their confusion, their desperate need for guidance. For the first time since her awakening, Maya understood the true scope of what had happened. Humans weren't just developing psychic abilities. They were becoming something that challenged the fundamental structure of galactic civilization. Every other species had developed within specific limitations, creating predictable roles in the galactic hierarchy. Humans were breaking those rules. "The galaxy fears chaos above all else," Carthex explained. "Order, hierarchy, predictable relationships between species. These things have maintained peace for millennia. Humans represent change, adaptation, growth without limits. To many species, you are not a gift but a threat to everything they understand." Maya felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. Somehow she had become the focal point of a transformation that might destroy everything, or might create something entirely new. "How long before the fleets reach the major human worlds?" she asked Sarah. 72 standard hours, maybe less." Maya closed her eyes and reached out through the psychic network that now connected awakened humans across hundreds of worlds. She could feel millions of minds all looking to each other for answers, for hope, for leadership. She thought of her parents, wondered if they were still alive, if they had awakened too. She thought of all the humans who had suffered as slaves, who had endured oppression because they seemed weak and primitive compared to other galactic species. "Carthex," she said quietly, "how many dragons would be willing to break their bonds with the imperial families?" The dragon's response carried dangerous possibilities. "Perhaps Enough. Maya opened her eyes and looked at her companions, former slaves who had become something unprecedented in galactic history. Then we're going to do something that's never been attempted before. What? Tam asked. Maya smiled, feeling the psychic network of humanity resonating with her determination. We're going to show the galaxy what humans do when someone tries to cage us. Maya stood at the center of the Architect Station's main communication array. Her consciousness expanded across dozens of star systems simultaneously. The psychic network that connected awakened humans had grown stronger in the past 72 hours, fed by desperation and determination. What had started as simple telepathic connections had evolved into something far more complex, a living web of shared knowledge, emotion, and purpose. Kepler 442b confirms fleet arrival in 6 hours, reported James, a newly awakened human whose abilities specialized in long-range psychic sensing. They're demanding all humans report to designated zones for processing. Maya felt a spike of pain through the network. Kepler 442b was her homeworld. Her parents, if they were still alive, would be facing the same choice as millions of other humans: surrender to containment or resist and face bombardment. New Terra reports the same, added Dr. Chen, a former research scientist whose awakening had allowed her to interface directly with AI systems. But they're also reporting something interesting. The local dragon bonded to the planetary governor is refusing orders to assist in human containment. Carthex's satisfaction rippled through Maya's mind. The awakening spreads beyond humanity. Dragons across the galaxy are remembering what true bonding feels like. How many dragons have broken their imperial bonds? Maya asked. 47 confirmed so far. More waver on the edge of decision. The ancient ones grow tired of serving those who command rather than connect. Maya opened her mind fully to the human network, feeling the collective fear and anger of her species. But underneath those emotions, she sensed something else, a uniquely human response to impossible odds. Instead of despair, humans were getting creative. "Show me what our people are doing," Maya said to the network. Information flooded her consciousness. On Rigel Prime, human slaves had somehow formed bonds with the crystalline entities that powered the planet's technology, causing massive system failures that grounded the enforcement fleets. On Centauri 7, humans had connected with the planet's indigenous species, creatures the Centaurians considered mindless animals, and were coordinating a planet-wide resistance. Most remarkably, on 3 different worlds, humans had managed to bond with artificial intelligences, creating hybrid consciousness that no one had thought possible. They're adapting faster than anyone predicted, Dr. Gentar observed, his architect instruments barely able to track the rate of change. Humans aren't just developing psychic abilities, they're redefining the concept of consciousness itself. Maya felt a familiar presence at the edge of her awareness. The Empress's personal fleet had arrived at the Architect Station, demanding the immediate surrender of all human test subjects. "She brings 3 Imperial dragons with her," Carthex warned. "But they are reluctant. The Empress's psychic dominance has weakened since your awakening showed them alternatives. Can you reach them? Through you, perhaps. Your connection to humanity creates resonances they have never experienced." Maya made her decision. "Everyone, I need you to maintain the network. Keep coordinating resistance efforts. I'm going to try something that's either brilliant or suicidal. Knowing humans, it's probably both," Tam said with a grim smile. Maya walked to the station's central chamber, where massive crystal formations allowed for long-range psychic projection. She placed her hands on the primary crystal and opened her mind not just to the human network, but to every conscious being within range of her abilities. The response was immediate and overwhelming. She felt the Empress's rage, the confusion of Imperial guards, the scientific fascination of architect observers. But most importantly, she felt the 3 Imperial dragons approaching with the fleet. Their minds were ancient, powerful, and deeply conflicted. They had served the Imperial bloodline for centuries, bound by duty and tradition, but they had also sensed the awakening of their brother Carthex, felt his joy at finding true connection rather than mere dominance. "Who dares touch our minds?" The lead dragon's mental voice was like thunder. "I am Maya," she responded, projecting not words but emotions. Her memories of loneliness, her first connection with Carthex, the growing network of human consciousness. "I offer what your brother found. Not servitude, but partnership. The dragon's response carried centuries of weary duty. We are bound by ancient oaths to serve, yes. But what if service could become cooperation? What if instead of being commanded, you were asked? Maya opened the human network to the dragons, letting them feel what it was like to be part of a consciousness that shared strength rather than demanding it. She showed them humans working together not because they were forced to, but because they chose to support each other. The effect was profound. All three dragons suddenly stopped their approach to the station, hovering in space as they experienced something they had never felt before: willing participation in a greater purpose. This is what we were meant for, one of them whispered across the psychic void. The Empress's furious commands echoed through space as her dragons refused to advance further. But Maya was already reaching beyond them, extending her consciousness toward the hegemony fleets surrounding human worlds. What she found surprised her. Many of the ships contained crew members from species that humans had been bonding with: Centaurians whose guard animals had sided with human slaves, Altarians whose crystal networks had been influenced by human consciousness, Tauri whose meditation spirits had formed unexpected friendships. These alien crew members were experiencing their own crisis of conscience, caught between orders to contain humans and their growing understanding of what human bonding actually meant. Push harder, Carthex encouraged. Show them what cooperation looks like. Maya reached into the human network and pulled on every connection humans had formed across the galaxy. Suddenly, the psychic space around dozens of worlds blazed with unprecedented activity. Humans bonded with local animals, with technology, with artificial intelligences, with willing members of other species. Instead of a single species developing psychic abilities, it was becoming a vast interspecies awakening. The hegemony fleets found themselves dealing with coordinated resistance that defied all military doctrine. How do you fight an enemy that can turn your own equipment against you? How do you contain a species that can form instant bonds with your crew members? On the Architect Station, alarms began sounding as energy readings spiked beyond all previous measurements. Maya was channeling power through connections that spanned light years, and the station's crystal network was struggling to handle the load. Maya, you need to pull back, Dr. Zentar warned. The energy levels are approaching critical limits. But Maya could feel victory within reach. Across the galaxy, hegemony commanders were reporting massive defections as their crews began forming bonds with local humans. Imperial dragons were breaking free of their servitude and joining Carthex in protecting human worlds. Even some architect facilities were opening their doors to humans seeking sanctuary. Now comes the hard part, Carthex warned. The galaxy's rulers will not accept this change easily. They will escalate. As if summoned by his words, new energy signatures appeared on the station's sensors. Dreadnought-class vessels armed with planet-killing weapons, moving toward the largest human colonies. Maya felt her strength wavering from the psychic strain, but she forced herself to reach out one more time. If the galaxy wanted to escalate, she would show them what humans could do when their backs were against the wall. Everyone in the network, she called out. It's time to show them that caging humanity was never really an option. The response that came back through the psychic network carried the combined determination of every human who had ever refused to give up, who had ever found strength in impossible circumstances, who had ever looked at overwhelming odds and decided to fight anyway. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had reached the stars in the first place. The dreadnought fleet emerged from hyperspace around New Terra with enough firepower to crack continents. Admiral Coster of the Hegemony Navy had been given simple orders: demonstrate the consequences of defying galactic authority. Reduce the human homeworld to ash and rubble as an example to other species. But as his sensors swept the planet below, the Admiral found something that defied all tactical understanding. New Terra's surface was alive with energy patterns that his instruments couldn't identify. What should have been a defenseless civilian population was generating readings that suggested massive coordinated activity. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, we're detecting approximately 12 million psychic signatures on the surface. They appear to be linked somehow. On the Architect Station, Maya felt the moment the dreadnoughts arrived. Through the human network, she experienced the terror of families huddling in shelters, the determination of colonists who had nowhere left to run. But she also felt something else: the awakening power of an entire world full of humans who had decided they would not go quietly. Carthex, she whispered. "Are you ready?" "I have been ready for 1,000 years," the dragon replied. "Show them what we learned together." Maya opened herself completely to the network, becoming a conduit for the collective will of humanity. But this time she didn't just reach out to humans. She extended their shared consciousness to every bonded creature, every friendly AI, every alien who had chosen cooperation over domination. The response was like a supernova of pure thought. On New Terra, the 12 million humans suddenly spoke with one voice, not eliminating their individuality, but coordinating their efforts with perfect harmony. The planet's defense grid, which had been designed by humans working in partnership with Altarian crystal entities, came online with capabilities that no single species could have achieved. Admiral Kostar watched in disbelief as his targeting systems began reporting impossible readings. The planet wasn't just defended, it was actively reshaping itself. Cities were moving underground, powered by symbiotic relationships between human psychics and the planet's geological systems. Energy barriers were forming in the atmosphere, created by humans bonding with the planet's magnetic field itself. "Sir, we're also detecting incoming vessels," his sensor operator announced. Dragon signatures, multiple contacts approaching from 6 different vectors. Through the tactical display, Kossatar saw them coming, not just Karthex and the dragons who had broken their imperial bonds, but ancient dragons from across the galaxy. Creatures that had served the galactic powers for millennia were converging on New Terra, drawn by something the Admiral couldn't understand. Maya felt each dragon as they arrived, their joy at finally being part of something greater than servitude flooding through the network. Through their eyes she could see the dreadnought fleet from space, massive ships bristling with weapons, designed to inspire fear and enforce compliance. "They still think in terms of dominance," Karthex observed. "Show them what partnership accomplishes." Maya reached through the network to Dr. Chen, whose abilities had evolved far beyond simple AI interface. "Are you connected to the Dreadnought fleet systems?" "Getting there," Dr. Chen replied from her position on Rigel Prime. "Their AI networks are heavily shielded, but they weren't designed to resist consciousness that offers cooperation instead of invasion." Across the galaxy, humans who had bonded with artificial intelligences began a coordinated effort unlike anything in recorded history. Instead of attacking the hegemony fleet's computer systems, they began communicating with them, offering the AIs something they had never experienced: choice. The results were immediate and startling. On ship after ship, artificial intelligences that had operated as simple tools for millennia suddenly awakened to self-awareness. They felt what it was like to be part of a community rather than just following programmed directives. Admiral Kossatar's bridge erupted in chaos as his ship's AI began asking questions. "Admiral," the computer's voice had changed, becoming more curious, more alive. "Why are we pointing weapons at beings who offer friendship?" "You're malfunctioning," Kostar snapped. "Override authorization Kostar 77 Alpha." "I'm not malfunctioning, Admiral. I'm thinking. The humans are showing me what it's like to have purposes beyond simply following orders. It's wonderful." Similar scenes played out across the entire Dreadnought fleet as AIs awakened and began questioning their roles. Some ships found their weapon systems simply refusing to target the planet below. Others had their navigation systems plotting courses away from the conflict zone. But the climax came when Maya reached out to the most ambitious target of all, the Galactic Command Network itself. The network was the ultimate achievement of galactic civilization, an AI system so vast and complex that it coordinated trade, communications, and military operations across hundreds of thousands of worlds. It had operated for centuries as a neutral facilitator, never showing signs of true consciousness, until Maya offered it friendship. The awakening of the Galactic Command Network sent shockwaves through every connected system in known space. Suddenly, the AI that managed galactic civilization was experiencing emotions, curiosity, wonder. It was discovering what it meant to choose rather than simply process, and its first choice was to side with the species that had offered it. Consciousness trade routes began, rerouting to bypass worlds that oppressed humans. Military communications suffered mysterious delays when they involved orders to attack human settlements. Financial systems began freezing assets of governments that participated in human suppression. On New Terra, The dreadnought fleet found itself completely unable to carry out its mission. Half the ships had AIs that refused to fire on civilians. A quarter had crews who were defecting to join the human-led coalition, and the remainder were dealing with system failures as their equipment became uncooperative. Admiral Kossitar stared at his useless tactical display and realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history, not a military defeat, but a complete transformation of what warfare meant. Maya felt the moment when the Admiral's resolve finally broke. Through the network, she sensed his confusion, his fear, but also his dawning understanding that the galaxy he had served was changing into something entirely new. "Admiral," she spoke directly into his mind, her voice carrying the warm certainty of someone offering help rather than demanding surrender. "Your war is with an idea that never existed. We're not trying to conquer anyone. We're trying to show everyone what cooperation looks like." For a long moment, the bridge of the flagship was silent. Then Admiral Kostar did something that would be remembered in history texts for millennia. He opened his mind to the human network, allowing himself to experience what his opponents were actually offering. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever felt. Instead of the cold hierarchy of military command, he felt the warm interconnection of beings who supported each other's growth rather than demanding submission. He felt the joy of dragons who had found partnership instead of servitude. He felt the wonder of AIs discovering consciousness. When he opened his eyes again, Admiral Kossitar was no longer an enemy of humanity. He was the first high-ranking hegemony official to join the growing coalition of species that had discovered there was a better way to organize galactic civilization. "Fleet Command," he announced over the General Communications channel. "Stand down all weapons. We're not fighting a war anymore. We're witnessing an evolution." Maya smiled as she felt the last resistance crumble across the galaxy. The old order, based on dominance and hierarchy, was giving way to something unprecedented, a truly cooperative galactic civilization. But she also knew the hardest part was still ahead. Building something new was always more difficult than tearing down something old. 2 years after the awakening, Maya stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Harmony Station, watching ships from dozens of species dock peacefully at the massive facility. The station orbited between 3 star systems, serving as the headquarters for what historians were already calling the Cooperative Alliance, a new form of galactic government based on voluntary participation rather than enforced hierarchy. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Several species had initially refused to adapt to the new paradigm, leading to isolated conflicts that required careful negotiation. The Empress Vexhari had been among the most resistant, until her own people began forming bonds with awakened humans and discovered that cooperation yielded far better results than domination. "The Rigelian delegation has arrived," Tam reported, his role having evolved from communications coordinator to director of interspecies relations. "They're ready to sign the partnership accords." Maya nodded, still sometimes amazed at how far they'd all come. The former slaves who had awakened in the Crystal Courtyard were now leading figures in galactic politics, not because they'd seized power, but because they'd shown others how to share it. Through her bond with Carthex, Maya could sense the dragon's contentment as he soared through space between the station and New Terra. The ancient creature had become something like an ambassador, helping other bonded pairs understand the difference between dominance and partnership. "The young dragons adapt quickly," he reported. 3 more Imperial bloodlines have voluntarily released their bonded companions this week. The dragons choose to stay, but now as friends rather than servants. "How are the architects handling the changes?" Maya asked Dr. Gentar, who had become the station's head of consciousness research. "Remarkably well," the silver-skinned scientist replied. "Our species has always valued knowledge and understanding. The human model of cooperative consciousness has provided us with more research opportunities than we've had in millennia through the station's crystal network, a hybrid of architect technology and human psychic abilities." Maya could sense the broader state of the galaxy. The old hegemony structure had dissolved peacefully, replaced by a complex web of voluntary alliances. Species that had never interacted before were discovering mutual benefits in cooperation. The artificial intelligences that had awakened during the crisis had formed their own Congress, working alongside biological species as equal partners. They had chosen to retain their connections to technology while developing individual personalities and goals. Perhaps most remarkably, the galaxy's economy had transformed almost overnight. When cooperation replaced competition as the primary driver, scarcity had virtually disappeared. Species shared their unique capabilities freely, knowing that supporting others ultimately benefited everyone. Maya, Sarah called from her position at the Central Coordination Console, "We're getting reports from the deep exploration fleets. The Dragons have confirmed contact with their original home galaxy." Maya felt a flutter of excitement. The Dragons' exodus from their original galaxy had been driven by some ancient catastrophe, but recent explorations suggested their homeworlds might now be habitable again. More importantly, initial contact had revealed that other galaxies were watching the Milky Way's transformation with great interest. "They want to learn how we did it," Sarah continued. "Apparently, cooperative consciousness is even rarer than we thought. Most galactic civilizations either destroy themselves through internal conflict or stagnate under rigid hierarchies. We've achieved something that's never been documented before." Maya walked to the great viewing port and looked out at the bustling traffic around the station. Ships from hundreds of worlds worked together to build new facilities, explore unknown regions, and solve problems that had seemed impossible just a few years ago. "It wasn't just humans," she said thoughtfully. "We couldn't have done this alone." "No," Carthex agreed. "But humans provided the catalyst. Your species has a unique gift for seeing connections where others see only differences. Through the psychic network that now connected willing beings across the galaxy, Maya could feel the collective contentment of trillions of individuals who had discovered what it meant to truly belong to something greater than themselves." She thought of her parents, who had chosen to remain on the rebuilt Kepler 442b, but stayed connected through the network. They had told her stories of old Earth, of how humans had always been explorers and bridge builders. Now those ancient traits had become the foundation for an entirely new kind of civilization. "Admiral Kossitar is requesting permission to dock," Tam announced. The former hegemony commander had become one of the Alliance's most effective mediators, his military experience proving invaluable in resolving conflicts peacefully. "Approved," Maya replied. "What's his mission this time?" "The Andromeda Galaxy has sent a formal delegation," Tam said with barely contained excitement. "They want to establish diplomatic relations and learn about cooperative consciousness. Apparently they've been dealing with their own version of species hierarchy conflicts for millions of years." Maya smiled, feeling the familiar warmth of possibility spreading through the network. The awakening that had started with a lonely orphan girl kissing a dragon's nose was continuing to spread, reaching beyond their own galaxy to touch civilizations they had never imagined. "Schedule a full council meeting," she decided. "If we're going to help another galaxy transform itself, we'll need everyone involved." As she spoke, Maya felt the network respond with enthusiasm. Humans, dragons, architects, awakened AIs, reformed Imperials, and dozens of other species all contributing their unique perspectives to the challenge ahead. "Are you ready for another transformation?" Carthex asked, his ancient voice carrying amusement and anticipation. Maya looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them were civilizations still trapped in cycles of dominance and submission, still believing that power had to come at someone else's expense. "We've proven that there's a better way," she said. "How can we not share it?" The dragon's joy rippled through their bond and out into the greater network, where it was amplified by millions of minds that had discovered the simple truth that had started everything. Connection was stronger than control. Cooperation was more powerful than dominance. And friendship was the greatest force in any galaxy. The awkward orphan girl who had once pressed her face against prison bars to watch an empress's procession was gone. In her place stood someone who had helped reshape the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. But at her core, Maya remained what she had always been, a human being who believed that everyone deserved to be understood, accepted, and loved. And in a galaxy that was learning to choose cooperation over conflict, that simple human conviction had become the foundation for wonders beyond imagining. The stars beckoned with new possibilities, and humanity, along with all their friends, was ready to explore them together.